Hi guys, welcome to my channel. In this video, you will learn a beautiful and smart opening connected to d4. d4, if your opponent plays d5, play bishop to f4. After knight to f6, play e3. If c5, go for c3. The first thing you will notice in this opening choice is the dark squared bishop is developed. You've created a pyramid exposing spaces for your light squared bishop to be developed in the future. In this way, you can have activity with the knight coming over to f3, then bishop moving over to e2, knight can hop to d2, and so on. This opening is known as the London system. The London system is okay for beginners who want to switch up the scope of their chess game by employing new ideas, especially activating the bishop so early in just move 2. This can also be regarded as the reverse bishop's opening. The beauty of this opening is that as a beginner who wants to move from a conventional knight move on the move 2 can start with an idea with bishop to f4 in the second move. If e6 comes up, play knight to f3. After knight to c6, you can play bishop to d3. So far, so good. I have been calling out the moves. In most cases, this might not just be the way it is. However, you can play this setup against any defense employed by black. So, if bishop to d6, a very good important idea here is not to take that bishop right away, because if you take the bishop right away, queen takes bishop and you get the black queen activated for free. So, it will be an advice from me to you is to put the bishop back to g3. Allow black to do it by taking. You can now take with the pawn on h to g3. So you can activate your rook on this h file. So many information about an opening, right? Good. You have the rook on this file. You have the light squared bishop on this diagonal. Very beautiful. In the future, you can choose to develop the queen to c2, put the knight on d2, and castle the long side. There is also an early attack by moving the knight over to this square, then activate f3, then you can now push for this king side attack. In this position, most played move by black would be to castle the king to safety. White can go ahead to castle. If bishop takes bishop now, just take with the pawn on h. This is how you can play the London system. This is just the introductory part. Let's dive more into the London system by seeing some traps in the London system. So, one of the things you need to understand about opening generally is the move order really matters. The place you start from and the place you end in your opening can determine what kind of opening you are playing. So, since you are looking at the London system, starting with d4, your opponent might respond with d5 immediately. However, in this particular trap, this person played knight to f6. After our second important move, bishop to f4, remember, developing this bishop here also give the bishop an influence over this diagonal to c7. e6 followed, knight to f3, going against the conventional e3. c5, now e3 followed. Just imagine the structure we already have. We are now having that structure for the London system, which will be closed up by c3 later in the future. In this position, knight to c6 comes up very early, followed by knight to c3. The purpose is to go after this square, the c7 square. This idea is employed because we have played bishop to f4 in the second move. So, if black is unaware of this device, he might play pawn to d5 now. This is where knight to b5 comes up, giving us the first trap in this video. So in this position, if you run it with an engine analysis, engine gives white plus 3.1 advantage. In this second trap, d4 comes up, followed by knight to f6, bishop to f4, g6, e3, bishop to g7, a different setup entirely. You see, the bishop is now fianchettoed to g7. So you can play the London system if you know exactly what you are doing against any defense that black throws at you. So how can we get advantage here? Knight to f3 comes up, d6. Knight on b to d2. Here, black castled very fast. It is also possible to know that you can play c3 now, which is nice, limiting the strength of this bishop along this diagonal. However, let's go for a concept with h3, stopping this bishop from coming here to pinning down the knight to the queen. So, if knight on b to d7, you can play bishop to c4. If rook to e8, then we can have an initiative here. Almost 700 people played this particular trap and they succeeded. If you check databases, you will notice the numbers that are falling for this trap. So the thing you need to do in this position is to launch bishop takes the pawn on f7 check. Remember your positions properly. In this case, if the king takes, then knight to g5 check. It doesn't matter where the king goes to. If the king goes back to f8, then knight to e6 check comes up, attacks the king and the queen. You should know what happens from here. The queen is lost. Similarly, if the king goes to g8, then knight to e6 is also winning. The queen is trapped. So in this particular trap, after d4, d5, knight to f3, knight to f6, bishop to f4. Let's take note of the bishop to f4. c5 followed. Now e3 comes up, knight to f6, knight on b to d2. If bishop to f5, then you can simply take this pawn on c5. This is the advantage of this move. If e6 comes up, opening space for the dark square bishop to recapture this pawn. Launch knight to d4. Knight to d4 is offering knight to knight trade and also threatening this bishop. There are two cases in this position here. If knight takes knight, then pawn takes this knight and you solidify the center. This pawn is defended. You have an extra pawn. In a case where bishop takes the pawn on c5 to regain a point and to equalize material, we can simply eliminate this bishop on f5 and take on the bishop pair. In a scenario where black decides to hold on to material by playing bishop to g6, keeping the bishop safe, we can start creating threat with bishop to b5. This pins the knight to the king and we are threatening knight takes knight, pawn takes knight, then bishop takes pawn to take the rook after the check to the king. So rook to c8 comes up, supporting in defending that particular knight on c6. If knight takes, pawn takes on c6. Bishop to a6 threatens the rook. The rook is running out of squares. After the rook goes back to c8, bishop to b7 is simply crushing because now we are attacking two pieces at the same time, a rook and a pawn. Then you can now see the strength of putting the bishop on f4 in the first place. After rook to b8, bishop takes the rook. This is also a trap that you can employ in the London system.